Hi everybody, and welcome to today's fly tying tutorial. The pattern I'm going to be tying today, and I'll just give you a peek at it right now, this is a look at the finished product, is a black bunny leech. The one difference you might notice on this is the fact that I'm using a fish skull bait fish head, and I'll talk about those in just a little bit, but this is a look at the finished pattern. I'll go into a little bit of and talk about some of the variations you can make from the original, and I will give you a few little tips while we're going through this tutorial. So let me get started. I'm going to be using 6/0 tying thread, just some black 6/0 thread today. I like 6/0 because you're able to put a little bit more pressure on this black rabbit fur. So let me get that tied on. I'm tying these today on the Allen Fly Fishing N402 BL hooks. The BL stands for barbless. It's a really nice thing because they're extremely sharp. Plus it's barbless, so you don't have to worry about debarbing it. You can tie this pattern with a cone head, and you wouldn't have to worry about debarbing the hook prior to putting that cone head on it. Okay, this is a 2XL hook. Allen's does sell, I believe, the 4XLs as well. I really like the 2XL for this. It really seems to match some of the local leeches in my area. However, if you want a longer hook, they do sell a longer hook, and if you do decide to go longer, I would then recommend you using the Magnum rabbit strips. I'll give you a quick peek at what these look like. These are the Magnum ones. And the main difference between the Magnum and the size that I'm going to use today, which is more of the medium size, is simply how they're cut. If you look at the back of the Magnum strips, let me just pull one of these out of here. The Magnum strips have a, relatively, maybe around a 1/4 inch chunk that's cut from them, versus the ones I'm tying today is a little bit less than that. Not quite half, but just a hair less. And that means a big difference whenever you're tying this on because there's a little less material to work with as you're placing it on the hook. Speaking of which, let me get started with that. And I'm going to show you a piece of this rabbit fur. So whenever you buy these strips, they come already like this, and that's how I like them. I don't like to trim them ahead of time. If you plan on becoming a commercial tyer, that's something you may want to consider. You may want to go through and figure out exactly the length of each one of these prior to tying one fly. That way you can have all of them trimmed and you're ready to just crank them out one at a time. However, I'm not that way. I'm not a commercial tyer. I prefer to just trim them as I need them. Thus, I'll leave this piece its entire length while I'm tying this pattern, which could interfere a little bit, but because I've tied a lot of these, it really doesn't seem to. Plus, I have a few tips to kind of get that out of the way. Well, for starters, whenever you look at this piece of rabbit fur, it's all going in one direction. And if you look, the direction's actually towards the bend of the hook, and that's the way I want to tie it on. So I'm going to first line it up and figure out how much rabbit fur I need. I'm going to place this hair directly on top of the shank of the hook, and I want it to be about the length of the shank and a little some. So I'm going to kind of stop it right there. I'm going to hold on to it with my left hand, and with my right hand, I'm going to pull back the fur so I expose a piece that I can tie onto. So that piece will be right there. That way I won't be worried about matting any of them down. I'm then going to place that piece directly over the hook shank, and this time I'm going to pinch it down with my right hand, not my left. Typically, whenever as a fly tyer, whenever I'm introducing a lot of techniques to beginners, we always say pinch down with your left, wrap with your right. But I don't want to do that in this case because if I pinch with my left, all this fur will want to spring back and go towards the back of the hook. So instead I'm going to pinch down with my right and just place a couple wraps. 1, 2, I don't have to worry about really pulling yet. 3. And then now I want to kind of twist it back with my right hand as I pull a little firmer with my left, and put 2 more wraps in. And now when I let go of my right hand, that fur will be sticking straight up. And I can put a couple more wraps. I might actually wrap back so I know I'm wrapping over new material. Now I have that secured to the hook. I'm then going to, I can pull this back and now I can wrap forward. Now before I do that, I will mention to you, if you want to add a little bit of crystal flash to this fly, this is one instance where you can. You have this nice little base to tie onto right here, and you can add some crystal flash. Occasionally I will use black crystal flash, but for the most part I like that matte, that satin type look that just using regular black gives you. That's what I believe that's what I believe represents the local leeches in my area. But hey, if you want to add some sparkle to it, please be my guest. There's so many ways to vary this pattern, and that's one good one. But I'm not. Instead I'm going to be wrapping forward, and I do want to build up the base of this body just a little bit. I'm actually going to wrap back, put a couple wraps under there. Build back up. Then I get near the the eye, I'm just going to put 1/2 hitch to make sure nothing comes undone. All right, next I'm going to wrap this around the hook, kind of like you would wrap chenille on a woolly bugger. As I wrap, I want to make sure I pull this fur back, kind of like palmering hackle. I want to make sure that fur is always going towards the back of the hook as I place a wrap above it. So I'm just going to keep wrapping, make sure that fur is not grabbing itself. I don't want to crowd the head, so I'm going to stop about 2 eyes back. Somewhere around right here. So that's my stopping point. I want to have a little bit of space up there because when I tie off, I'm going to have a few extra things going on with this fish skull. So I'm actually going to wrap this piece back up. I'm going to actually unwrap it to here, and that's where I'm going to tie off. However, before I do that, I want to do the same thing I did before, and I want to create a little spot where I can tie off. So I want to pull that rabbit fur away from a spot, and that's going to be the spot right there. So you can see I have all that fur pulled back, so I don't have to worry about catching it, which would then mess up my next pattern because this is going to be the piece I'm going to use on the next fly. So I'm just, again, hold back with my right hand, with my left, place some wraps over. I can add a little bit of pressure, and then by this point I can then transfer it back to my right hand. So now I have the bobbin in my right hand, and I can place a few more securing wraps. Okay, now at this point I want to cut this away. This is where you're going to want to use the sharp part of your scissors. A lot of guys will go for the tips, and you can do that, but I will recommend cutting it a little bit further down in this section, basically right above the screw, because then you're ensuring you're not really messing around with your blades, because this can be kind of tough to cut through. Okay, I have that trimmed away. Now, at this point, I could do a couple more things. I'm going to push it back just a little bit with my hand, just expose a little bit more of that eye, because I'm going to be adding a baitfish head on pretty soon. If you want to add any more crystal flash, this would be another great spot to put it. You can have crystal flash coming over the top and off the bottom, or you can have it coming off the sides. It's truly up to you. Like I mentioned, I am not going to be doing that, so instead I'm just going to finish this off. You don't have to worry about it being too pretty. I might leave it like that. I'm actually going to be taking this thread off before putting my baitfish head on, but I want to talk to you a minute about these baitfish heads. So here's a look at the baitfish heads that I'm going to be using. These are called fish skull baitfish heads. These are put out by flymanfishingcompany.org. They're great because they add a lot of weight to the front of this fly. So they give it kind of that clouser style, that jig style action at the front of the bunny leech. The size I'm using today is small medium, and they actually recommend this on size 4, 2, and 1 hooks, though I'm using a size 6. I really like that extra weight on a size 6 hook. The color is dark gray. Well, the one nice thing about these baitfish heads, first of all, they come with eyes on them. I'm sorry, they come with a little package of eyes. So you simply will pull these eyes off and place them directly on your baitfish head. And here's a look at one of the baitfish heads. Now, if you want to super glue those on, you can. Do you have to? Absolutely not. Sometimes I'll put a little epoxy over the top of the eye if I know I'm going to be fishing around a lot of rocks. That way, with this fly banging around a lot of stuff, those eyes won't pop off. But you don't have to do that. The other neat thing about this is if you look inside this, and I'll try to give you a little zoom, I'll zoom in just a little bit. Okay. If you notice at the bottom, there's actually a keel inside this fly. So if I would place this on with that keel at the bottom, if I place it on just like this, there's going to be weight at the bottom of the fly, and it's going to make this hook point down. If I invert that, let me take that back off, and place it with the keel at the top, it will then ride with the hook point up. And in fact, I'm going to be placing it that way because I will fish this in local streams as well, and I don't want this fly snagging on some of the sticks and some of the plant life, some of the vegetation in those local streams. So I prefer to have my hook point up. Before placing this on, I always just like to make sure it's going to fit. Let me take that off. Try to take it off. All right, then I might finish off the head of this fly. Again, you don't have to be too pretty about any of this because it's going to get covered. I just put a half hitch. I'm going to put one whip finish. I'm placing that whip finish a little closer to the eye because I don't want to build up that thread too much so that my baitfish head won't fit in place. Okay, I might trim that away. And then the Flyman Fishing Company, they recommend that you use super glue to secure this in place. So I might just grab a little bit of super glue. I don't want to get any of the super glue on my material. So I'm just going to place this around just on the thread part. Okay. I have my super glue there. I'm going to make sure that this keel of this baitfish head is facing up. So that's the thicker part facing up. I'm going to place this on and push it back until it's locked into place. Now when you move this back and forth, there should not be much play in it at all. And if you build up your head correctly, there won't be much play. Now if you look, you will see a little bit of my thread hinting out at the bottom, but we want to make sure that this is secure in place. So I'm just going to add a little bit more thread. And I want to just build up just a little bit of thread in front of this fish head to make sure it's not going to be going anywhere. Even though I got super glue in there, I really want to make sure it's secure, and in fact they recommend this too. Then I will put a final whip finish, trim, and then I will place a little bit of head cement. If you have your super glue out and you feel comfortable super gluing the front of your fly, you're more than welcome to do that too. Let me turn the camera just a little bit and give you a look at the finished bunny leech. This is a really great pattern. Again, I don't have much flash on it. If you prefer flash, please go for it. I'll give you a look at this the whole way around. The nice thing about this bunny fur is that there's just so much movement in the water. So if you are fishing this in a still water instance, like a lake or a pond, which I really love to do that, this will have a great jigging action, yet all this fur will just be moving so much in the water. The one final piece I want to show you is that there are many colors you can use to vary this pattern. I'll show you a few of my more favorite colors. You obviously know black was one of them. I like this chartreuse color. I really love pink, red. Here's a great olive color. Let's see, we've already tied with black. So here's a look at black. And then finally I also love white. That just represents so many bait fish. That white with a little bit of flash really just takes off. I really love to fish these flies with, when I'm fishing for stripers and for bass on some of the local warm waters. And then these really do well. They work well on trout too. Whenever I fish for pike, I prefer the red color. But hey, these are the fish on my local waters. I'm sure the fish on yours will probably want a couple different variations of it as well. So thanks to the Flyman Fishing Company. These are some great bait fish heads they've created through Fish Skull. And also, again, thanks to Allen Fly Fishing for the N402BL. That's the 2XL barbless hook. And I do appreciate all of you viewing this fly tying tutorial. Again, this was the black bunny leech with the bait fish head. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them directly on this YouTube page, or you can email me at tcamisa@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody.